Hey guys, thanks for joining me. And if you like what you see, please subscribe.
Hello, peoples. Welcome to Sharp Ends. Today I have something a little bit different for you. I'm going to talk about the Endella. And in particular, this Endella has an interesting story, I think. It has an interesting story in regards to how my channel got started and how I got into knives. And it also has an interesting story as far as it's been missing for a year and it just came home. And its disappearance and reappearance are also another story, which I think are educational and interesting as well. So first, I'm going to ask you to smash that like button down below, subscribe, and leave a comment. Comments really help the channel. This dude here is the Endella, which is a very basic Spyderco knife. It is a longer blade, and it's one of the reasons why I got it, because it's got a longer blade, 3.5 inches. Before I got into knives seriously, I started to get tenacious. Like that was the main thing that I had, which was like a $50 Spyderco knife, back lock, and it comes with, or no, actually that one was a liner lock, and it came with 8 CRV, 13 MOV, which is the soup salad type of stuff. Not that great of a steel, but definitely better than 440C or something like that. And I thought I was like at the high end there, and then when I lost the tenacious at a baseball game because I couldn't leave it, or maybe it was a concert, and so I tried to hide it, and then I couldn't find it afterwards at the gate. I went online and I just kind of scrolled through, and this came up, and I was like, why would a knife be that much more expensive? And it wasn't that much more expensive. Granted, this was like this was the 8 CRV version of this, which was like $80. I was like, that's crazy. So I looked up some more and I found a 20 CR version. I was like, what is 20 CPM 20 CRV? That led me down a whole other rabbit hole of figuring out about knives. And I ended up getting this, even though it was like $150, something like that. And then later I ended up getting these scales to replace it with, just because I like doing things. And that kind of got me into this whole notion of like figuring out knives and figuring out what's going on with them. And You'll notice a couple of things about this knife now. It's been used really well. You can't really see the edge, but it's been used for zip ties. The tip is broken off right now. It is super loosey-goosey, like very loose right there. And honestly dangerous if I were to try to close it, because it's so loose. It's also missing its pocket clip. So what's going to happen now is I'm going to start taking this apart so that I can do a full cleaning. While I do that, I'm going to keep talking about the story of this knife. So I got this knife, and then I started getting into the knives in general, and I started, looking up what other knives cost, and I couldn't believe that people would spend over $200 on a knife. And 6 months later, suddenly I have knives that cost over 200. Some of them Spydercos too. I was really into Spydercos when I started collecting. And then lo and behold, I was like, why do people have knives that are over $400? And lo and behold, now I have several knives which are over $400. Now I haven't broken into the ultra high end stuff like Herman knives or the Russian, the Shurgorov, that kind of stuff. By the way, all my tools and everything are linked down below. If you They're very cheap and very good, easy to work with. So I would suggest if you use one of my links, it does go and help the channel. However, I am not sponsored by anyone. So, you know, I'm just taking this apart. And what I like to do is I like to take this apart with everything in order. And I always start with a left pivot, and then I work back down along the spine. I don't remember where I got these scales from. Scales are what we call the handles here. I'm also going to kind of make this video a little bit more on the beginner end in case you are just yourself like me, once discovering high-end knives. Just in case you were actually here to find out how to take this apart. So I don't remember how I got the scales. I thought they were cool. They were on like a deep sale, and I wanted to try my hand. I think this was one of the very first times that I actually kind of customized a knife myself. I've done that now multiple times. Although I have to say, Spyderco is still the easiest knife to do that with, because of all the different parts. There's other ones like Deca and some Benchmades that are good too. But Spyderco, very good for that. Now, I haven't bought a Spyderco in years. The Spydercos that I do have are legacy things in my collection. I'm not really interested in Spyderco anymore. Not that they're bad. I'm just not interested. All right, so now this next part, I'm going to pop this up. There's a little spring in here. We'll see what happens. Not a spring, but a piece of metal. It'll come up now. There's the scales, and then there's the interior liners. The liners you can kind of see in there maybe, and they are skeletonized and inset. So I'm going to try to lift off the scale. Did I get the liner too? Yeah, I got both parts. Here we go. So what happened with my friend? So my friend had a Tenacious, really good friend of mine, like one of the closest friends I have. And first off, you can see in here, a little bit of rust here and there, but nothing excruciating, very dry. Bearings are very worn in. Like I said, this hasn't been maintained and it's been used like a dog for a year. He had a Tenacious, which I had given him. And he used it a lot. He uses the knife every day for work and for pleasure and for all of his hobbies. And his Tenacious, he'd been beating it like a dog. And I was looking at it. I was like, man, you got to leave this with me. I'm going to clean it up, sharpen it for you, and I'll give it back to you. But you know, you're going to be without a knife, so that's bad. He was like, well, I don't really want to give up my knife because then I would be without a knife. Totally understandable, right? For someone who's using a knife all day long, or you know, here and there. So I said, okay, I will give you one of my favorite knives of all time. This is the Endura. I love this. If you like the Tenacious, you're going to love this. This thing has a premium steel, really nice handle on it, blah, blah, blah. So he takes it away. 2 weeks later, I see him again. I'm like, oh, I got your Tenacious. Do you have, you know, my knife? He's like, oh, I'm really sorry, man. I lost it. I was like, you lost it? He was like, yeah, totally lost it. Don't know where it is. And I'm like, oh, that sucks. And I'm like, well, you know, if you're going to lend somebody something, you know, things happen. I'm certainly not going to throw a fuss. Or he was like, can I buy a new one for you? I was like, no, it's kind of customized. And it was a kind of a sprint run and other things. And don't worry about it. You know, just don't worry about it. Time goes on. So a year goes on. 6 months, I think I asked him, you know, have you ever find that knife? He's like, no, I never found it. I never saw him with this knife. He's also very forgetful and very accident prone. So him losing something and then finding it again later, or him, you know, breaking something, very much something that he would do. By the way, I'm going through now and I just washed the bearings with some alcohol, and now I am washing the blade with some rubbing alcohol. And I'm just going to continue to clean this whole thing up as I tell this story. So last week, lo and behold, he comes over and he goes, oh, you know, I've got a couple of knives on me here. Are one of these yours? And he was pointing at the Tenacious. But he also took this one out of his pocket. And I was like, no, that one's mine. That one's been missing forever. He's like, oh, I thought you gave that one to me. I love this knife. He's been using it here and there. He dropped it the other day, broke the tip off of it from a lift. He was up doing rigging up high and cutting zip ties with it. Sure enough, you know, I tried to cut a piece of paper with this, and this had one of my own edges on it. A KME. I think I put this edge on with a KME, but you can see nicks up and down this edge. Like, it is really bad. But it's not as bad as it would be if it was 8 CRV or 13 MOV, right? 8C, whatever that soup salad, alphabet soup steel is. Honestly, I'm pretty impressed how well this ended up doing over that time. Yeah, so now he's sad because I've taken his favorite knife away from him, which he had lost. Although I do plan on getting him another knife. And you know what? I looked up online just out of curiosity. Are they making the 20 CR, 20 CR, the CPM 20 CR version anymore? And they are. And in fact, on DLT right now, they're selling this exact version, not with this scale, obviously, with the plastic G10 scales. They're selling them for $108, which for this steel and, you know, for what Spyderco does with their heat treat, absolutely a killer deal. I can highly recommend this knife. The lock itself, although is not as fancy as a liner lock or a compression lock or any of the other locks that people love, kind of feels old fashioned, but man, it gets the job done and it stays locked. It is not going to break on you. You can hard use it. You can use it on zip ties all day long and nothing is ever going to happen to it. It is not sexy. It has a small pivot. That's probably the biggest ding I have for it, honestly, is that I wish the pivot was a little bit larger. But otherwise, I mean, the thing is still good to go. And one of the best knives I've ever had. Honestly, it could be the only knife I have. I don't need the other 300 knives. So, yeah. So I got it back from him, and now I'm finally cleaning it up. It's obviously going to need a full sharpening, a full cleaning, all that jazz. But, you know, sometimes you go down a rabbit hole, I guess is the moral of this story. And you're like, why would anyone spend that much money on a knife? And that rabbit hole ends up leading to you making a whole YouTube channel and spending a lot of time thinking, reviewing, and learning bushcraft skills in a whole other realm of things, which I think is interesting and cool. So you never know when you're going to accidentally fall into that rabbit hole. Sometimes curiosity can lead you to the strangest places. And, you know, as far as taking a knife and lending it to a friend, you know, you could be doing the same thing for them, giving them a good hobby, or at least giving them a good tool that they're really going to appreciate. Because now my friend has, in a way, been spoiled. He's used a semi-decent knife now for a while. And when I told him how much it actually cost, he was blown away. He was like, really? I was like, yeah, but listen, how much have you used that knife? That's your favorite knife now, isn't it? And he was like, yeah, it is my favorite knife. It's always sharp. It's got great blade geometry. It has awesome, it stays sharp forever because of the knife steel. It, you know, cuts really well. You can get in there underneath zip ties and do all the crazy stuff that you're doing, prying steels and stuff like that, which you should not be doing, but that's what you're doing, right? And like that. So right now, these little pins, these backspacer pins, are actually D-shaped. They have a little ridge on one side, and I'm putting them back in the way they came. Probably doesn't need to go that way, but that's what I'm doing. And I'm just taking this rag, and sometimes I'm taking a Q-tip as well to clean out different spots on this, right? So, and I'm keeping everything in order, like I said. Putting these pins back in. These capture pivots, these capture locks for the bolts here are very nice. That means that you don't necessarily need to have two sets of torque bits like you do on some knives where they don't have a capture, they don't have that D-ring in there. This one does have it, so that's very good. Does mean that I need to get these all back in here. And then what I'm going to do also is I'm going to put a new pocket clip on it, give it a little shine, give it a little sharpen, all that jazz. I have half a mind, honestly, to give this back to him, but it means so much to me as one of the first knives that started my channel that I'm thinking that what I'm going to do is actually buy him an Endura, bought a K390 version. Cedric, the guy from Cedric and Ada channel, absolutely loves this. He loves the police, and he has it in K390. But you know, it makes me want to try out K390, number one, and number two. I think that it might be better for my friend because it'll stay sharper even longer, even though he abuses his stuff really badly. You know, so that's what it's meant to do. It's meant to be used, right? All right, so now we've got everything back in here, and we're going to start, we've already started the reassembly process, but we're going to continue the reassembly process. I'm going to take my Q-tip here, and I'm just going to make sure that I've got the pivot completely clean. I like to use a couple of different things on my pivots. One is gunny oil, which is just, you know, for oiling up guns, obviously. The other thing is to I use KPL, knife pivot lube, and that's what I'm probably going to use today. So I've cleaned out these bearings here. phosphor bronze, very small, but they're okay in this case. The KPL logo has washed off this bottle because I've had it for so long. Lasts forever. Hops number 9 is the other one. You can get $10 for a bottle. Now that the alcohol is dried off, I'm just going to put a drop here and on the pivot. And then I'm going to put one of the bushings on. It is now clean and dry. Put that on there. Put in just a drop, not too much. You really don't want to overdo it. I did put some on the pivot as well. I'm going to put this on the knife. Put the last bearing here, and we're about to get to the tricky part of putting these back together. It's been a while since I've done this, but I do remember this being tricky, so this is going to be the tricky part coming up. Next, we're going to put the back spacer on here, and that just goes over those 3 guys. This goes right here, and this fits in the groove there. You do not want to get grease in there. It does not need grease. It will not appreciate the grease. And then this guy needs to go in here. And you just need to bring it over, snap it in. There it is. All right, so now we're good. And what I'm going to do is, while this is still together but still apart, if you get what I mean, I'm going to take some Loctite, and I am going to put just a little bit on the inside of these threads. That will prevent it from, especially the pivot, getting too loose and these other screws getting too loose once it dries in 24 hours. I'm not using the red stuff. I'm using the medium or light pivot lube, not the white stuff or the red stuff. You do not want this to be a problem when you have to go back and take it apart again. You want to be able to break it if for some reason you're having a problem with Loctite. All you got to do is get a some kind of heat source gun, something like that, and put it on there. I'm going to just put one more drop on top of this dude here. And I'm not putting it around the whole thing. It'll work in. Like, I'm not putting it around the whole bearing. I'm just putting a little drop on it. And when I open it and close it, that oil will work its way around. And now I'm putting this guy liner on first and then the scale on secondarily. I'm doing that on purpose because the liner can be hard to line up with all the pieces that are going back on there. All right, and now I'm going to finger tighten all of these guys back up. First, the pivot. So now I don't need to worry about the Loctite accidentally getting over on the scales and stuff because I put it inside the threads side, right? The pivot is a T8, and the back spacer guys are, I think, T7 or T6. What are you? T6. So I'm just starting these up all in there, but I'm not tightening them down. And I'm going, oops, I went from the wrong direction. So I need to go this way. These are going back to the same exact holes from whence they came. Again, that's probably not needed, but that's just the way that I do it in case there's some kind of strangeness about that. All right, so we're just going to tighten these all up here. Okay, so I went ahead and just did that off screen a little bit, but now we've got this in here and it's perfectly centered. The blade is centered in the handle, which is good. And I've made it just a little extra tight, so it'll still, it's more of a rolling out knife now than a flicking open knife, but with a lock back like that, that's okay for me. And I'd rather it not get loose again, especially if I lend it to a friend. And now the next thing I want to do is go through my buckets of spare parts here and see if I can find something that will match. I have a bunch of old Spyderco parts, so I don't think that'll be a problem. Something will match and also allow me to put a old Spyderco clip on here. I have one that's all blacked out, which should look really nice with this. I don't have a deep pocket carry one, which I sometimes get from Lynch North W. Very cool American-made company. Now, obviously, Spyderco has an American-made branch, and they also have a Japan, and then they have Taiwan. And in general, the companies make one type of knife, or a couple of different knives. So like the Spyderco Spidey Chef comes from Taiwan. The is that not the right size? The this guy, the Endura, and a couple others come from Japan. The Paramilitary 2 comes from America. The price is usually reflected in that. I will say that I think that I had to pause it for a second because my kids upstairs were doing causing some kind of riot. But I feel like the best company, I think America is really good, but I don't turn your nose up at the Taiwan factory. The Taiwan factory does extraordinarily good work. Their OEM is really good. I don't know if Spyderco owns the factory themselves or if that's just the happens to be the OEM there. I don't know the whole story. It is taking me some time to find the right screws for this, which is sad. But I've only found one so far, so I'm going to keep looking for ones that will fit. All right, I was finally able to find the right kind of screws. I found an old pack of Mannix 2 parts from one of my builds. I built, much later after I got this. I started rebuilding some Spydercos, and so I found the extra bits from that. I will say that this seems to me that the Spyderco clips do definitely need your Loctite, because they definitely seem to get loose. Not the biggest fan of their clips, but I'm being a traditionalist with this knife, and I think the black works out really well with this Spyder. Another reason why I really like this is because it looks like the spider from the symbol is just sitting there right in the center of the web, which I think is pretty cool. All right, so overall, do I like this knife? I do. I think it's a very good knife, and for $108 for this knife steel at DLT, absolutely a good deal. If you like someone a lot and you want to give them a more traditional knife with a lock back, but they need a bigger type knife and they're, got big hands, I can definitely recommend the Endura. And I also have the Endella in 20CV, which is a smaller size of this guy. I also can highly recommend that too. So yeah, thanks so much for joining me today, guys. Like, subscribe, leave a comment. I'm going to sharpen this up, and I'll do that in front of the TV tonight with some stones and get it nice and good to go. And then what do you think? Should I give it back to my friend as a Christmas present since he loved it so much? I'll let you guys decide. Thanks so much. I'll see you next time on Sharp Ends. Bye-bye now.